All right, everybody, welcome back. I'm here with Matthew Shaffer, an amazing dancer. Matthew, what kind of dancer would you say that you are?
I would definitely say I'm a commercial dancer, although I started in concert dance when I was very young. And I'm sorry, my dog wants to be a part of the
I
interview
love it. I love
already. She's like needs the spotlight.
I love
But so I was a concert dancer. I danced with a company called Giordano Dance Chicago, and I apprenticed at River North in both in Chicago. That was right out of school, and then I went to New York and did theater dance. I danced at Radio City Music Hall and on Broadway, and then I moved back to LA. But I would say that the majority of my work is on camera and it's very jazz, musical theater, modern based.
Very, very cool. So, when did you start dancing?
I was 9 years old. Well, I was eight turning nine,
Mhm.
and the movie Dirty Dancing came out.
Yeah.
And this was like scandalous because my mom and dad were very, I'm Italian Catholic, and my parents were very like, conservative, even though I grew up in Redondo Beach and, in Los Angeles, they were very conservative. And so we didn't get to watch rated R films or anything like that. So they brought the tape in and they watched it, and my sister and I snuck out into the living room and watched it behind the couch while they were watching it.
Love it.
And then yeah, and this was like, VHS tapes. It was like a thing to like collect VHS tapes, and my parents had the copy. And so every day after school, they were both at work, my sister and I would race home and we would pop in Dirty Dancing and we would practice the dance steps. I was Patrick Swayze, she was Jennifer, Grey's character,
Mhm.
Baby, and we would practice the steps. And then we were at a wedding. This is a true story, and this is in my book, my first book. So You Want to Be a Dancer. We were at a wedding, and it was a big wedding at the Ambassador Hotel, which is now gone. And they had both a live band and they had a DJ. And so I like halfway through the wedding, and there were very few kids at this wedding, by the way.
Mhm.
My sister and I walked up to the band leader, and I was like, "Can you play I've Had the Time of My Life from Dirty Dancing?" And he was like, "Yes, we actually can." And so 3 or 4 songs later, the song comes on, and my sister and I run out to the dance floor, and we just get into our groove and we go for it. And by the end of the song, all of the adults, everyone at the wedding had cleared the floor, and it was just me and my sister in the center of this parquet ballroom floor with all of these adults watching us do Dirty Dancing, which is kind of like gross if you think about it. But anyway, my parents were like, "Okay, you guys are serious, you want to dance." And so then they put us into dance class, and the rest is history.
So, you and your sister started dance at the same time?
We did. I'm 2 years older than her, and she and I both. She was let's see, I guess I was in third grade and she was a first grader, and we started dancing at the same time. And actually, my sister has the natural talent, both musically as a singer and as a dancer. But because in the 90s, when we were growing up in Los Angeles, there were so few boys. Like, this was before Dance Moms. This was before it was really cool to be a male dancer. I mean, obviously there were male dancers, and I had people like Barishnikov to look up to, and thankfully I had supportive studio owners, including Rick Sullivan, who was my first male dance teacher, which I was very fortunate to have him as well. But there weren't a lot of boys dancing, and so I kind of accelerated because, like, also at that wedding was an agent, which is just kind of like an LA story. So we got signed with commercial agents
Wait,
right from
this
that wedding.
wedding okay, so when you were at this wedding, you guys were kids?
Yeah, no,
I don't
yeah,
know why I thought you did it, like, last year. I was
no,
like,
no, 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 no. No, this was the entrance into us dancing, is that
"Oh,
I was like 9 years old and my sister was like seven, and we were dancing. And by the end of the wedding, these two little kids are on this ballroom
oh,
floor.
I love that."
And so this agent came up to my parents and they were like, "Do your kids act? Do they want to be in commercials?" And so we kind of went down that road. And then how it works, not so much anymore, but back then, was that there were so few boys that could dance that I would book jobs, just because I was a boy. Literally, it wasn't because I was talented. I mean, hopefully I was talented, but it was mostly just because I could do the steps and I was a boy.
I think
And
there's a lot of great dancers who always say things like that, and I think and I say that about myself too. Like, I'm always like, I wasn't the best, but I got the job because I worked really hard. But I think that's also like an ego thing because you probably were like one of the most talented people in the room. And it's just that you never felt that way because
yeah,
you're humble in that respect. You know, because I always think
yeah,
people work very, very hard. They just don't realize that they're working that hard when they love what they're doing.
No, that's absolutely true. But I'm always cautious because it's like, I know there were people that were far more talented, like in terms of raw talent. Like
Mhm.
I wasn't flexible. I had to work really hard for it. Flexibility didn't come easy to me. Also, neither did technique, to be frank. I was full of passion and I loved dancing. But the technique was the thing that I had to work on the most. And there were other boys even in at my studio that were far superior in terms of technique, but they didn't have that drive, which I think is kind of what you're referring to. Even I teach college dance now, right? I
Mhm.
teach dancers in a BFA program here in Los Angeles, and what I find so interesting is, and you and I know this, Kim, but like I think young dancers who are just starting out. So if there are any young dancers or aspiring performers out there that are listening, you have to keep into perspective. It's not about how talented you are. It's about your willingness to like put yourself out there and like show your passion and your vulnerability and create a character. And I think that that's what came very naturally to me.
Yeah, I mean, to be a 9-year-old and ask for a song at a wedding is very bold. Like, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
you'd be like, "Hey, can you play this song for me? Thank you." Like, I feel like that alone is a lot, in a
Yeah.
wonderful way. So, yeah, definitely putting yourself out there is very important, and I do agree that, like, if you're not the best dancer in the room, that does not mean you can't have a career in dance. I've seen many people not be the best dancer at their studio and move on to a beautiful career, and it
And usually that's what it is. I
Mhm.
mean, now I teach on a convention and it's like I always go out of my way to pick the dancers or the perform I call them artists because I think that's what it is. It's an art form, right? So these artists that stand out to me, they're never the ones that have the best technique, or they're never the ones that are always constantly being called out and praised. It's
Mhm.
always the ones that aren't being called out and praised, that are kind of like hiding in the back, but like have really created a character and embody what it is for me to be a storyteller, and have that beginning, middle, and end, and show the audience a journey. I'll always gravitate towards those people. And if you look at any major successful studio across this country, especially, those dancers that are the best or the top of the elite team, they go off and they go to college and they find some other passion because they're so burned out on the
Mhm.
dance part. It's the ones that never got to stand out at the studio that burst out onto the scene, in my opinion,
Mhm.
more often than not.
And when you say country, we're in the United States, just for those who may not know that.
Yes, thank you.
No worries. So what was your first like big? Well, I guess let's start with this. So you're 9 years old. Did you compete or did you just do recreational dance with a recital? How, or was it
Yeah,
just
that's a good
auditions right away because you were in California?
A little bit of both. So I was in Redondo Beach, which is a south suburb of Los Angeles. It's on the ocean, and it's in the South Bay. And the studio was really small. It was called Dancing Creativity Center. But the owners of the studio, Chris Paulton, female, and Rick Sullivan, male, were in the LA dance world. And like Rick was in, Saturday Night Fever and like all of those kind of 70s disco movies. And he choreographed for, television and amusement parks like Six Flags and everything. So he helped me find auditions
Mhm.
that maybe my agent didn't help find. And then I was the type of kid that like I wanted to compete, and our studio wasn't a competition studio. It was really more of a, it was a small town dance studio where they did a recreational winter performance and a June show every year. But I convinced Chris to put together a dance team, and we did compete, but we weren't very successful. And this is really funny. Actually, you'll appreciate this as someone who's in the competition world like I am. My teacher Rick Sullivan, he loved jazz, classic jazz music. So he used Birdland, that very traditional horns and like old school jazz. And he came in and he still had the album, the LP. And he came in and he put the record on and he's like, "This is what we're dancing to." And this was during the time when like Paula Abdul and Janet Jackson and all of these people were really famous, and that's what everyone was dancing to. And here we are dancing to classical Birdland. It was gorgeous choreography and it helped shape who I am as an artist today. But we lost everything in competition because no one wants to see six, 13-year-olds dancing to Birdland on stage. You know what I mean?
Oh man, yeah, competition in America is very different than competitions in other countries as well. Like in
True.
Canada growing up, the competition scene that I experienced was your teachers weren't allowed backstage with you.
Yeah.
You had to check in yourself and they rope off a section where you had to watch the other dancers in your category. So there
That's how
was
it should be.
no option of like, and then you stood up every what, hour or so, because you sat there the whole time, and then you stood up in a U on stage while the head judge explained why so and so beat so and so. And so it was like really setting you up for auditions, because you learned how to take
Yeah.
criticism really well. I don't think they do that in Canada anymore. I'm pretty confident that they don't, but that's how it used to be, where it was like first, second, third, everyone got a purple participation ribbon that was not in first, second, and third, and then you just stood there and took it. uh,
Yeah.
and sometimes you took praise and you had to learn. I remember, like, I was one of the ones that won. I'm sorry. So I would win, but my mom always taught me, like, you can't smile too much when he's like being like, "This is why you won." You have to like pretend that it's like you still like are listening. And it was a big
Yeah.
learning
Like,
thing of like how to be humble. My mom was really good about making me humble in that world.
we would never, like, the group wouldn't win, but I would get a standout, like, you know, charismatic dancer award, or most performance on one of those kind of. But it was the same when I was growing up here in the United States. It was first, second, third, and 2 honorable mentions, and that's it. No, there was no top 10. There was nothing like it is now.
It's super different. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's always going to evolve and change too. What kids can do now is so much different too. Like a win was like a double or a triple pirouette in tap shoes, because I mostly
Yeah.
did tap solos. And now it'd be like a shame if I like, people are doing so many tricks that I couldn't even dream of learning how to do now. It's
Yeah.
amazing. So you did a little bit of everything. What was your first like big notable job that you got?
I booked an American beef commercial. I was 11 years
Yes.
old, and it was
Hold on.
like,
I love that. I love that.
yeah. And I talk about it in my second book, Dancing Out of the Closet, because it's okay. So my first book, So You Want to Be a Dancer, is geared towards pre-professionals and those entering the professional world and their parents. It's one part self-help and then one part anecdotal advice. Like, I share in each chapter, like I'll talk about concert dance, and I'll share my story about concert dance, and then I'll share how to get into concert dance, or theater dance, or
So
Broadway,
it's a
or
really informative book on like each chapter is a specific different
yeah.
form of dance.
I'll show
Oh
it.
wait, I
This
love
is the first one. But in my second book, I talk about this. This is a little more risque, but so I booked this beef commercial, and we're at a semi-professional stadium for like a minor league stadium in Long Beach to shoot. And we're in the dugout of a locker room. And here are these like 14 adolescent, prepubescent male dancers with hormones raging and deep in the closet like everyone. And this kid, I'm not going to say his name on here, but I mentioned it in the book. He corners me in the stall while I'm changing, and he's like, "Why are you changing in the stall?" And I was like, "Because I want my privacy." And he's like, "But we're all out here changing." And I was like, "Yeah, I know, you're all." Anyway, so that was my first experience it was my first experience into a professional set
it.
and job experience. But then also it was like my first hands-on experience with gay energy, and that was something new for me because I was Italian Catholic, so deep in the closet. And so that job stands out in my mind as both my first professional job, but also the first time that I felt feelings
Right.
for the same sex. So
Wow.
it was,
That's a
yeah,
big day for you.
it was a big day.
uh, and then what was the dance about beef? What did you do for the dance?
So I know, right? And sadly, I don't even remember who the choreographer was, but I do remember the audition. I walk in, and one at a time, we had to improv 3 counts of 8. And I just remember the choreographer, she was behind the camera, and the director and the choreographer were in the casting. So it's the same as it back then, it's the same as it is now. Like, when you're not doing a self-tape, self-tapes, we record at home, like we're kind of doing this podcast.
Mhm.
But for those of you that like have never been to an audition, you go into like a small casting room, and there's a casting director, and sometimes it's a choreographer and a producer and a director. Who knows who's behind the table? But anyway, I knew the choreographer was behind the camera, and I could see her, and I made eye contact with her, and she mouthed just like that. And I
Mhm.
was like, all right. And so here I am, and I'm doing like my little improv move. And she gets up and she's like, yes, I love it. She's like, can you learn this step? And it was basically like a grapevine
Mhm.
with a baseball bat.
Yes,
And
I could.
so
That's the best. It was great fun with a baseball bat. Step behind,
grapevine with a
step and
baseball bat.
swing. Step behind.
Yep. And then over the head, and it hit the ball. And of
Yes.
course, none of us who were booked on the commercial had probably ever played baseball. I was like barely hitting a ball off of a T-ball stand, right?
Huh.
And so anyway, the choreography was very basic. It was like a lot of grapevines, box steps, chaîné turns all around this diamond field. It was actually probably really cool. And here's the funny part: it never aired in this country; it aired in Japan.
Love it. That's
Yeah,
always how stuff is too, where you shoot here and it airs somewhere else.
yeah.
And then, what was your first big stage performance that you booked, where like there was like a huge audience and that whole like, because that's a whole different kind of rush as a dancer.
Yeah, well, I did a lot of that when I was growing up. So I signed with an agent at the time. LA Talent was my
Mhm.
agent, dance agent, and which is so funny because I was there commercially and for dance. And I remember going out. And so basically there were a lot of showcases, industry showcases, and big like holiday things. Like I remember like a wannabe Rockette show, basically, that, you know, they
I love
didn't
how
pay the
honest you
rights.
are with your credits. Uh,
Yeah. Well, no. So, but my first actual, like, if I, as an adult, it was dancing with Giordano's company and Gus Giordano. It was an amazing experience. And so the first theater I sat in was the Athenaeum Theater in Chicago. And I mean, there were like, thousands of people. And then we toured all over the world. I was in Germany, France, Italy, Switzerland, Austria, all over.
and what was
And
that
some,
like the first time you got to travel internationally?
it was honestly, Kim, it was the best experience. And I wish that every 18 or 19-year-old it was forced to go abroad and see how another culture lives and how another another idea of life. Because for me, I'd traveled, Mexico, Canada, the United States as a child, but I'd never gone to Europe. And so I'm 19 years old. I'm an apprentice in Gus Giordano's company. And one of the male dancers injures themselves. I had my passport. So here's the note.
Always have
Be
your
prepared.
passport.
I was the only one of the male apprentices. There were 5 of us. I was the only one that had a passport, so that didn't need to be expedited. And I knew all of the rep. So because I knew all of the company rep and I had the passport, I was the one of the 5 male apprentices that got selected to go to Europe. And so I remember 19 years old, packing way too much in my bags, not realizing that I'm gonna have to lug this all over Europe on and
Mhm,
off tour buses.
mhm.
And so we land in Frankfurt, and all of my peers in the company are like in their late 20s and early 30s, and they have like one bag that everything's rolled and everything's perfect. And we're paired with our dance partner. So my roommate Christy Kitchen was my dance partner, and the first night we get back to the hotel, and she's like, all of this is wrong. I'm going to teach you how to pack. I'm going to
I
teach you.
love it.
She taught me, and to this day I can roll with a weekend bag and have a suit, 2 changes of clothing, my dance clothes, and 2 pairs of shoes, and I can get everything in one bag now because of that tour.
Yeah, the
But
first
the
time I ever toured, I brought way too many different dance shoes. Like I brought
Yeah,
every possible dance shoe you could possibly have. My mom even went out and bought other ones, and it was like, no, they didn't ask for any of these, therefore you don't need them.
right.
Also, they'll provide them for you if you do.
Well, that's just it. Like we get there, and then all of our costumes and our dance, shoes and everything are at the theater each night, because we had, tour managers and
Mhm.
a wardrobe mistress and all of these things. But I'm 19, so it was like eye opening in so many ways. First of all, Europe, especially this was in the 90s. This was 1998. Europe was just a completely different world at the time. Like now they're a lot more geared towards how America kind of goes through their day-to-day life. But back then they were still taking siestas, that everything would shut down from like 1 until 5 at night. It was not so uh, there wasn't a capitalist agenda,
Mhm.
so to
It wasn't
speak.
as Americanized or
Correct.
however you want to
Yeah.
word it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was there, but so like I remember like waking up early. I would write in my journal, which I still do this to this day. And I would go out, and all of the other company members would just be asleep from the night before, from like, partying or whatever after the show. And I would go out and I would like look, and I would go into cathedrals and go into museums, and I would just hike the landscape, and I would try to talk to people and have a coffee. And it was just such a cool experience. But the best part was then at like 4 o'clock, when we would all meet at the theater, and we would run through the whole show. We would tech everything, do all of our cue to cues. And then I just remember the energy. There's nothing better, especially than a German audience, but a European audience in general, but in Germany, really, like they crowd into the theaters, the opera houses, and wherever we're performing, and they pound on the floor with their feet,
Oh,
and
that's so
like the
cool.
energy, and like you're just waiting for the curtain. And it's like a 2 hour concert. And by the end, we did like a 20-minute curtain call, like standing ovations. And we choreographed dances specifically for curtain calls in Europe. And it was just a really cool experience. And I think there's nothing like performing on a stage in a European country, um, because the focus and the emphasis on art and dance and culture is so much more prominent then and now there than it is here,
Mm.
unfortunately. It's also more accessible to everyone. It's not just like aristocrats that get to go, or the upper 1%. It's like theater and dance is accessible to the working class, and the working class goes and supports theater.
That's cool. Very, very
Yeah.
cool. So now you're like really into being an educator of dance, right? Like through these
Yes.
books, if let's
Mhm.
start, and also a lot of convention work. What made you write your first book? How did that happen? What inspired you to do it?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. Not very many people ask that question, so I really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I was 10 years into every weekend going to a different city and judging a dance competition.
Hmm.
And I want to be very careful because I believe in dance competitions. I believe that they really help build camaraderie. They give a lot of people confidence. It's a great performing opportunity. And so I really love that aspect of it. The parts of a dance competition that I don't love are the idea that everyone deserves praise, that
Hmm.
everyone deserves a first place, that things just happen without work. These are ideas that are kind of being fostered that I don't love. And so I was really trying to make my peace with how do I, because I felt like a sellout. I felt like, who am I? Here I am working on television and film, going out every weekend and looking at these young dancers who I can tell really want to find a path into this industry, but are focused on all the wrong things. Like those all-Licicone turns and front aerials are not going to help you get a job in Los Angeles or New York. They're not even going to help you become a better person. And so for me, I thought when I was growing up, whether or not my peers that I was dancing with were going to be professional dancers wasn't the issue. The focus of dance was the discipline of an art form, the same way that a kid would be disciplined in karate or taekwondo or soccer or football. It was, you were developing character,
Hmm.
so that whether you want to be a professional dancer or not, you would have this character. So I started looking at how can I get through these weekends and not feel like inauthentic and not feel
Hmm.
like I'm selling out. And so I started writing down every weekend. I'd see something, I'd be like, I don't agree with that. This is what I think about it. And I'd start writing down notes. And after about 2 years, I had a whole book of notes. And then I was like, well, and parents would come up to me and they would thank me for my feedback, because I always offer feedback that is based on how to help them become a better person,
Hmm.
not just a better dancer. And so I was like, there's an audience out there, and I have a platform because I'm doing these competitions and these conventions. And my goal was to be an educator. And here I am sitting behind a judge's table. And again, I'm grateful for the opportunity. It helped me grow in my own ability as a director, because I could see what was working and not working. And I could offer feedback and critique, hopefully in a positive way that would help these young artists. But I knew that I wanted to have a bigger stage, and I knew that that was going to require committing to something. So I committed to this first book, So You Want to Be a Dancer, and I took all of the notes that I'd harnessed or cultivated over the last 2 years leading up to it, and I put them in a book. And then I thought, well, I've done work as a concert dancer. I've worked with musical artists on tour. I've done videos. I set choreography on cruise ships. I've done Broadway. I've done film and television. I have a little knowledge about each of these areas in the dance world. Let me create a chapter for each of these and weave this story through so that any young dancer between the ages of 13 and 26 can read this book and have a practical how-to guide of how to get into the industry. And so that's what made me write that. And then it was the perfect storm. I was working on Dance Moms. I was performing on a television series called Wet Hot American Summer.
Hmm.
And so I had the perfect platform, and this publisher read my book and they loved it and they thought, let's get it published. And I was able to incorporate a goal tracker and a journal. So it's kind of like the artist way in some regards. It was really important for me that there was like a really well-rounded book for young dancers. And so that's how I came about with So You Want to Be a Dancer. And then this book actually, through all of the work at the
Number
competition level,
one.
yeah, it went to number one on the new release. And I'm really proud of it. To this day, I still stand behind everything that I said in here. Like if you're looking for a way in, or if you are a parent or grandparent or aunt or uncle of a young dancer that doesn't know where to go next, like they have the talent or they have the skill, or maybe they're even in college for dance and they don't know where to go next, it's in this book. Like there are ideas and suggestions. The other thing that it's important, why I wanted to write this book, is because I think a lot of young competitive dancers think, well, I've done this my whole life, so I have to be a dancer. But in fact, you can be an agent, you can be a casting director, you could be a dance
Be a
therapist.
veterinarian. You can
You can,
literally do
well,
it.
exactly. No, exactly. But like those people that really still want to be in the dance industry, but know that they don't want to audition.
Mhm. That's very
So
true.
that's how that book came about.
And there's a lot of professional dancers out there who never competed. Like they're,
Correct.
and I think that that is changing because I think more people are competing now than they used to,
That's right.
because of social media and all of that. I do think that more people, or maybe it's just more readily available. I'm not sure because there's so many competitions out there.
Yeah.
But it used to be that, like, I would say people who are 25 and over right now who are in the professional world maybe half competed,
Yeah,
and it's
at least
not, yeah,
probably.
but it's not like a crazy, like it's not 90% or anything like that.
No.
Like, so if you're a dancer out there and you're listening and you're not at a competitive studio, that does not mean you can't be a professional dancer. You don't have to compete to be a professional dancer. And if you're a competitive dancer, you don't have to grow up to be a dancer. You can use it for your college, to get a scholarship. Like there's a lot of things
Correct.
that are great about competing, like you were
And,
saying.
and I agree. And yeah, so for those dancers out there that are listening that aren't at the competition studios, in some regard, I think you almost have a leg up, no pun intended, but you almost have a leg up because you don't have this preconceived idea of who you're going to be in the dance world or the dance industry. And you don't have this kind of chip on your shoulder. And I'm not saying that every dancer who competes has a chip on their shoulder, but I will say that those dancers that were at really high competitive studios that are really, really exceptional technicians sometimes forget or weren't taught that it's not just about your execution of a step, but it's about the connection to the story and what's motivating that step. And a lot of times those dancers that are at non-competitive studios, the emphasis is more story driven, so that the transition into the professional world is a lot easier for
And I do think that my cat's tail is in the way. My cat is now
them.
participating like your dog, and she never joins in on this. So she must sense your dog is nearby.
Thank
Um,
you for trying.
yes. So I do think that like okay. So for example, I think that the competition world is always constantly changing and waving.
Mhm.
Like for example, there's a girl named Kayla who dances for I can't think of her name now. She dances for somebody famous. Megan Trainor, right? When Megan
Oh
Trainor
yeah,
first came out, she got that job, and she was a senior competing, and I judged her, and she did a hip hop solo, and I think she got in the top 10, but she wasn't first, and it was like the comments that I gave her when I used to judge seniors. I always tried to judge in their solos. I would always specify, I'm going to talk to you as if you want to become a dancer, and
yeah,
just, and then this would be all my critiques would be like specific around that style and what I knew about it for becoming a professional dancer.
right.
And hers, I was talking about her pinky, because this is something that everyone should know as well. If you're out there and you're a hip hop dancer and you want to be a hip hop dancer and your little pinky comes out, you will not get a job because of that silly little pinky. Okay. You are not drinking tea. Put it down. Also lip
I agree.
syncing. Yeah. Also lip
Oh
syncing. When people lip sync, that is for Britney, not for you. You don't get to lip sync. That's for Christy.
yeah,
That's for the singer to do. So you can't lip sync along if you become a professional dancer. But I will. The point of that is that there are some people who she thanked me later in life for that critique, because she
yeah.
was like, I would have gone out there because she was from a competitive studio. I would have
Mhm.
gone out into the real world and not been able to do that bridge. But then there are other people who just want to compete and do just that too. So
Yeah,
there's really so many competitions out there that there's definitely one for whatever you want to achieve. And also you teach a lot at conventions too,
mhm.
where I think convention competitions are wonderful too, because then you get to watch the competition and then the next day have a general conversation with those kids and parents in that room, which is a really awesome thing that exists now.
It's literally my favorite thing to do. So you started this whole segment on becoming an educator. It's
Mhm.
something that I never thought that I would enjoy as much as I do, but it's almost if not more fulfilling than anything I've done, in that kind of like being a director, like when, and I know you've directed projects and people, it's like when you give a direction and you see it's such a subtle adjustment, but you see the actor or performer implement it, you're like, your whole world like feels validated, right? Because you feel like you were a part of their creative process, and that's part of your creative process. Same thing with education. And so I completely agree. I work on a dance convention called Fluid Dance, and it's a boutique dance convention. There's never more than 200 dancers in one room at a time,
Sarah
it
who
sounds
hosts
like,
it, right?
yeah, Sarah
Yeah, she's
Verville.
great. Yeah.
And yeah, I love her. And so it's exactly that. On Friday, we watch everyone compete. And it's not a ton of competition. It's like a few group pieces and one solo from each of these things. And then the next day, we spend Saturday and Sunday in the classroom. And I'm like, remember when you did this on stage? And I gave you, because we give them live feedback,
Oh,
right? So,
cool.
yeah. So after they're done dancing on the stage, after they've competed, each of us goes down, each of the choreographer educators goes down, and we speak on a mic and we explain things. Then the next day in the classroom, I'm like, do you remember when Tracy Stanfield said this, or when I said this? This is how we incorporate it. So for me, especially to those dance studio owners that are out there that are like, what's the next step? The next step is taking what you hear at competition from the judges that give great feedback and implementing it in your work as a choreographer and director and artistic director at your studio. So it should be less about that plastic praise, that trophy, and more about how is this feedback going to help you be a better person or a better dancer? And anything that we can apply to a dancer, we can apply to a human being and use it in life. Listening skills are important at every job, especially whether you're a stay-at-home mother or a nurse or a doctor or a lawyer. We have to listen, we have to react and respond to what's being said in that moment. These are things you learn from competition, so I love them. Convention gives me the opportunity to really, less about fierce, tricky, fun, fabulous choreography, more about connecting with each of the dancers in the room and saying, this is why we tell this story. And I love it. Next step for me then from the convention world was teaching at a college, and I teach at a college called Husson College and Studio. Formerly, it was Relativity School,
Hmm.
and then we were acquired by Husson College. But I love it because I'm working with these dancers. A lot of them came from the competition world, but some of them just came from, technique-based studios, and they come in and they want to be professional dancers, and they have the foundation and the technique. What they don't have is the ability to connect a story to the movement. The way that an actor analyzes a script, the dancer analyzes the choreography. So that's been my goal for the last 5 years, is to really go into studios and help them understand how to teach dancers that they're analyzing the choreography, not just the technique of the work. And that's what I love as an educator.
Yeah, and also there's a huge business side to dance, which I think people don't know that much about as well. So your first book you wrote how many years ago?
Well, I wrote it actually. I went through the process of writing everything in 2010, and it sat on a shelf for like 3 years. And then by 2013, my producing partner Jeff Payton, my manager Michelle Zeitlin, and I started pitching it around town, and that's when we secured a publishing deal, and it was published in 2015. So it came out in 2015.
Do you
And
think
the
a lot
in
has changed since that book has come out in the dance world, or it's pretty
No, I mean, I kind of saw the wave of where the dance industry was going in terms of a pre-professional, and so I kind of catered my writing towards that. And then also, I wrote it in 2010, but then when I received the
obviously you
publishing
read?
deal,
Yeah.
yeah, I went through a rewrite and I made it more topical for where we were now. Now, all that being said, obviously this last year threw a wrench in everything because we turned to online. The same rules apply, and if not more so, every piece of advice that I give in the book applies to being online. But now it's just a matter of shifting the audience. So like any kind of story that we would tell on stage, it's bigger because the audience is further away. But like you and I speaking on this, I just bring the audience a little closer. My camera's right here, and so it's a little bit more of an intimate exchange. But the same rules apply whether you're online or in a classroom.
And you get to play with your if it's at home and it's a stationary camera, you get to control your close-ups. Like you can go in and get
I
really
can come
intense.
in, come
Yeah,
in.
and then
Oh,
go away for some
yeah.
fancy stuff, which is cool. When did you decide to write your second book?
So I love writing.
It's
You're
great.
a writer as
Yep.
well.
Yep.
You're published as well,
Yep.
and
Oh yeah,
and
I never
so
talked about it. I always
I know.
forget.
Well, you
Yeah,
should.
I have a dance book out too. Well,
Yeah.
continue.
But it's so why I brought it up is because it's kind of like I'm sure how you feel. Like I've been a writer my whole life. Like I remember writing poems and
Well, you write
creative
in your
writing.
journal every day, you said. That's
Correct. Yeah.
writing, yeah.
Yeah. And so and you know, like short digital content and parodies and things like that that I know you do as well. But so after the successful launch of my first book, I was like, okay, but now I really want to write a story that is mine for me to get out for people that are feeling what I felt growing up. And what it was like this feeling of like not belonging and not feeling normal, but simultaneously feeling like I don't give an F, so
Mhm.
to speak.
That's
Like
cool.
I'm gonna stand out anyway. And so it was like this weird dichotomy that I had within myself of like this internal struggle of like hating myself, like what you know, adolescent doesn't at some point in their life, but also loving myself so much. So I wrote this book called Dancing Out of the Closet, and it's basically um, a collection of essays and short stories of like crazy zany things that I've done throughout my life that kind of you're like, oh, I can relate to that. How I kind of relate it to is that we all have a metaphorical closet that we hide in. We're hiding something from someone, whether we're not being fully honest with our parents or we're not telling our children, maybe we're hiding an impending divorce, or maybe I'm working through an eating disorder, or maybe I struggle with I'm a shopaholic, or whatever these kind of like private things that we keep hidden. Wouldn't it be great if we could share authentically who we are openly with the people that we say we love and trust, whether it be our friends, our spouses, our family, our siblings? And so I wrote this book as kind of a healing process, but also an exploratory examination of like, why are artists so interesting in that they're so willing to share the things that maybe quote unquote normal people wouldn't share?
Mhm.
And how does that impact a society? And I think now more than ever with you know the kind of the state of where we are in this country and in the world right now, um, opening up dialogues of like our similarities and our differences help us realize that we're all a lot more alike than we are different.
Mhm.
And so that was the motivation for this book, and it's called Dancing Out of the Closet. And like literally when I wrote this book, I had fun because it's like things that were scarring as a child,
Mhm.
like when I you know pooped my pants in high school.
That would be embarrassing. I agree.
It was pretty embarrassing, but like to write it and relive the story, it's kind of hilarious. It's like, oh yeah, that happened and that's a part of who I am. And it's not all potty humor, by the way, but
That's really cool. So, I always ask 5 questions to everybody who's on the show, and are you ready for them?
I am ready.
No pressure. You can answer them
Okay.
however you feel.
Okay.
There's no right or wrong answer. What is your favorite singer right now to dance to or choreograph to?
My favorite singer right now to choreograph to. You know what? I'm sad to say it's still Janet Jackson.
Why are you sad to say that? That's great. Janet
Okay, good.
rocks.
Yeah, I love Janet Jackson. I've actually just did like 4 or 5 songs of hers, some new, some old school.
I love it. Yeah, she's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Okay, what is your favorite music video of all time?
Of all time?
The one that you were like, that's my fave. I asked the tough question. No, I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
you do. Can I come back to that one?
Yeah, there's
Okay, I'm
no
gonna come back to
pressure.
that one. I need to like let my brain think about that one for
Okay.
a minute.
What is your favorite food to eat after you're done a performance?
Mm.
Favorite
A
after snack?
burger, like a burger medium with bacon, blue cheese, dipped in ranch dressing and ketchup.
It's always fatty foods for dancers. But it's also you've just worked so hard on your body that
Right.
it completely makes sense. In your dance journey, what is the hardest trick you had to learn how to do?
Um,
And it could be anything from like I've heard like
yeah,
tricks
no.
or just like lifting girls is really hard.
You know, I was not a great partner. I did not like partnering because I was like, well, I want to be the star. I don't want to lift the star.
I love it.
But no, that's just me being an um
I love it. I love it.
no, the hardest trick that I had to learn was not to oversell something.
Okay.
Like the for me, I'm so big and charismatic in life anyway that I realized that I could do a little bit less and it would go a lot further in terms of delivery and execution of either the story or the piece or the movement or both. It's like finding the subtlety. That was a hard trick for me.
Oh, cool. And then if you had to have another job outside of the entertainment business, what would it be if you had to have one?
As I'm sure you have gone there too, like artists, like I've only ever been an artist from the
Mhm.
time I was 18 on. And every time you go through one of those dry spells, you're like, why didn't I just do this or whatever? I think I would have made a really great attorney, litigator.
Mhm.
I love to argue and I love to be right. And I love facts. So I think I would have been a really good attorney. And I probably would have gone that route because I also love security. And
Mhm.
I feel like that's a lot more secure than the path of an artist, although I don't regret what I've done, but it would be a lawyer probably.
Cool. You got that music video inside of you yet?
I knew you were going to come back to it. Okay, so can I give a couple and I'll
Yeah,
explain
there's
why?
no, you can give as many as you want. You can give them all.
Okay, okay. Well, I still to this day, I still love like the old school videos that I grew up with. But I remember Michael Jackson's Thriller video. It
Mhm.
like stands out. I was a kid and my dad brought it home. He had a friend that was a DP in Hollywood, and my dad brought it home before it like hit the media, the television. I think it launched on a TV show, like on ABC. It launched before something. Anyway, Thriller, for obvious reasons. It's like a long, full, short film that I love. But I would also say I think that the Beyonce Single Ladies video is so well done because again, it's like keeping it simple but so effective.
Mhm.
And then I love, and I'm not going to remember. I think it's OK Go, the band. They did the treadmill video.
Oh
Do you
yeah.
remember that video?
Yeah, you're
I loved that video. I thought the choreography was incredible.
most people say Thriller and oh, okay, go.
Do
Uh,
they really?
I'm doing
That's
like my own
hilarious.
little silent figure like what is everybody's favorite things. It turns
Mhm.
out a lot of people have the same things.
So that
Yeah,
OK Go video has been referenced before?
uh-huh. The
Okay.
treadmill. Everyone always says
Yeah.
the treadmill video, the treadmill video.
Yeah.
It was cool.
It's a great look, it's because as a choreographer, you sit and you think, how can I bring something new that's clever, that doesn't feel forced, that doesn't feel like it has an agenda, but that gets the story. I mean, and I think they came up with that concept. I think one of the band members came up with that concept, if I remember right. But anyway, I think it's really well done.
Yeah, Peloton won't be doing that anytime soon.
I
Uh,
don't think so.
so you were talking about like the journey of everything and learning about subtleties, which is uh, a pretty interesting thing because I don't think dancers think in terms of acting.
Mhm,
Some of them do, some of them don't. But uh,
mhm.
but it's a big part of auditioning is to be able
Yes.
to emote the story one way or another. And a lot of times dancers, I'm talking film and television, they start like the scene where they're just walking and then they turn into dancers. So you have to
Mhm.
be able to do that bridge, right?
Correct.
Cool. Um,
Yeah.
what
Do you
would,
want me to talk on that
yeah,
or?
if you have anything, go for it.
Yeah, no, it's actually my favorite thing to teach. I on at Fluid Dance and at the college and in workshops across the country, both in studios and at the college level. I've gone to Pace University, University of Arizona, all over, and in the UK. I teach an acting for dance class because here's the thing: an audience doesn't spend $500, $200, $300 to watch us trick. They don't come in to watch us do a trick. They come in to get lost in the story, the same way that we go to see theater or a movie. We want to be lost. So to the dancers, I explain to them that the way into the audience's heart is not in that all is Saccone turn or in the transition steps, but it's in the motivation inside you that's fueling those all of those tricks. So for me, building a character from the beginning, like when you first learn your choreography, who are you, where are you, why are you there, what is your object, what are you trying to go after, the actions, the specific beats, going through all of these things. That's my favorite thing to do, but it's so important. And you have to think about it like this: when you're talking to a good friend and you have a juicy story that you want to share with them, you don't come right out and say, so and so is dating so and so. You're like, I have a secret. And you like kind of tease them, and then and you slowly build up to the story so that there's a nice arc and there's a nice reveal. It's the same thing that we have to do as dancers. And so I love working with dancers to say, okay, well, you started at 100%, but imagine if you kind of started slowly and gave it 60%. And I don't mean 60% of your energy, I mean 60% of the emotional capacity. And then it has some place to grow. And
Mhm.
then when you get there, you can pull it back in And these kind of like subtle uh, beats in the emotion and the transitions should match the musicality and should match the intention of the choreography, right? But that takes communication, that takes working with a choreographer the same way that an actor works with the writer in the script. It's my favorite thing to do with dancers. So, and I'm available for coaching if you ever need anything.
Yes. Which let's talk about social media then, since you're
Mm.
available. What is your social media? I'll also have
Across
it in the bio for everybody.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Kim. Across all platforms, I'm Funny Shaffer at Funny Shaffer, FUNNYSHAFFER.
And now, if
And
people out of the country wanted to take a class or do like, because I know some
sure,
people are teaching online or not, do you do that? Do you do the online stuff for studios outside of?
I do. You can find me on two different platforms. You can find me on showcasehub.com and you can find me on mentorly.com. Mentorly is a Canadian company and they like it. Yeah, I love their platform. You can also just reach out to me on my website, Matthew Shaffer. It's www.matthewshaffer.com. And you can hit me up there and we can create a whole series of classes or coaching or any combination thereof. And I'm always ready and willing to answer questions. I love interacting with studio owners, choreographers, and dancers alike. And then, of course, my books. Um, for anyone under the age of 18, you're only gonna want to pick up this book. But
Which
for
is
those of
the
you,
first book.
yeah, so you want to be a dancer. But my second book, I hope that young adults and adults will check it out. And those are both available on my website and at Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
And so let's get a little bit deep if you're comfortable with this. Like your second
Sure.
book is about like coming out of the closet, like becoming
Yeah.
like realizing that you're a gay man in the dance
Yeah.
world. What would
Mhm.
you, if I was a person in another country right now where it is not, I mean, there are still definitely parts of America where it's not as accepted as it should be, obviously, for
Yeah.
people to come out that way. But it's also really hard in other places, like way
Sure.
harder.
Yeah.
What is your like, how do you get through it if you're a kid who knows or thinks that they might, want to tell their parents that they want to be a dancer, but they're a male and it's not, or even a female really, but it's just not okay in their parents' eyes to chase an art form.
Yeah. Oh God, these are struggles that are real. And unfortunately, I would say that the good news is that I was blessed to have two parents, a mom and a dad who really believed in me and loved me regardless. And I talk about that in Dancing Out of the Closet. I talk about the fact of that I was like hiding in the closet and not coming out wasn't because of my parents. It was because of my own internal struggle with a couple of things. Knowing that then 25 years ago, but even still now, I think it's slowly shifting. But I knew that I wanted to be a successful performer, an actor. And back then, you couldn't be gay and have a career. You just couldn't do it. Now it's different. Thankfully, we have people like Neil Patrick Harris who have come out and were successful playing straight actors and
Mhm.
winning Emmys playing straight actors on TV series that now you can kind of have that. Um, Zachary Quinto, people like that. Back then, I didn't have that. What I would say is confide in someone who you know you can trust first. Share it with one person so that you're not living with it in fear or doubt or anxiety. Know this: you are loved and accepted. It might not feel that way. It might not feel that way at home. It might not feel that way at school. And it might not feel that way if you live in a country where being anything other than a cis male, female is persecuted. But the fact is there are more people like you. That's why I wrote the book. There are so many people that are in various shades of their fluidity, whether they're gay or bisexual, and now transgender, things like this. You have to feel safe confiding in someone. So don't share it with someone that you know is not going to react the way that you would hope them to react. Share it with someone who you already have a strong friendship with and that you trust. And if you don't have those people, that's what counselors and therapists and teachers at school are for, especially in the dance world. If you are a dancer, go to your studio owner, go to your choreographer and share with them. But just know that there are more people out there like you. There are also support groups and hotlines, and you can find those in my book, but you can also find them by just Googling, um, LGBTQ plus support group, and where I can go. In this country, I know there are, the human. There are so many.
Sure.
Maybe we can put a
Yeah.
list up, but
And then what Okay, so you said in the beginning you were super in the closet when you were doing this beef commercial. You were
Mhm.
super in the closet because, uh, like, you were raised religious, right? Or was that
Well,
not it for that?
no, it is. I mean, I grew up Catholic and I was, baptized in First Communion and confirmation, all of those things. But like, and I go into depth in this because it's something that I really examine. I don't know what kept me so in the closet, other than I felt like I was letting myself down, I was letting God down. And then the big part truly for me was that I thought I wouldn't be able to have a career if people knew that I was gay. That was a big motivating factor. And in fact, honestly, I didn't come out until I was 22. I came out while I was living in New York with a female at Radio City Music Hall. And I met someone in the show who also was dating another rockette in the show. And we would hang out in between shows because you're basically stuck backstage we would do 4 shows a day. And so you're in the Radio City Music Hall with nothing to do. So we would talk and I slowly felt confident enough to finally say out loud what I had felt all these years. The long and the short of it is I think I come to an answer in my book, but like to give your audience an answer right now, I would say it was all self-inflicted. I didn't trust my friends and family enough. And I don't want to tell some young audience member listening that you should feel safe confiding in someone that you know you can trust, because the fact of the matter is we don't know if we can
Mhm,
trust. And so I would say be brave in knowing that you are loved
mhm,
regardless of what the reaction is from the people that you love. Um, You'd be surprised how many people you influence and you don't even know it. You'd
mhm,
be surprised how many people admire you or love you from afar and don't have the strength or the wherewithal to tell you, or maybe they don't think you need to hear it. Maybe they think that you have so many friends that they don't need to share how much they love you. But the fact is as soon as I came out, I had nothing but an outpouring of support, love, direction, guidance, wisdom, all of these things that come, but they can't come to you until you put it out there.
mhm, you have
Like
to be
I'm not going
honest.
to unsolicitedly advise someone. If they come to me and say, I'm struggling, I'm curious about my sexuality, I would say, well, have you explored it? Like,
Well, and it's also different based on your age, where you live, your
sure.
circumstances. Like, it's an individual thing. So it's
Yeah,
definitely there's no one blanketed answer for this. It's such a complicated thing, and it's based on your personal situation.
true.
But it is great to know that there are, again, listeners, there are other people who feel the same way you feel, and it has been done before. There are a lot of male dancers. So if you feel, or if you just don't feel the same, you there is an opportunity for that. Now, totally switching fields, let's talk
Sure.
about social media.
Yeah.
So like social media obviously is now playing a bigger role in the dance world than it
Mhm.
ever did. What do you think about it? What are your thoughts on TikTok? Like all of the above, personal, just personal thoughts.
I think that social media is it's a double-edged sword. I think that a lot of great things have been born through this digital age and this renaissance. I think that you can be a dancer in Ohio or the middle of some place in Russia or Japan or an isolated area in New Zealand, and you can put your work out there and it can be accessed by millions of people all over the globe. I think that's incredible. I think that you no longer have to be in Los Angeles, New York, or Chicago to be heard as an artist and to be seen as an artist. So I think that that is really powerful. I also think it's powerful that something that we share on Instagram or on Twitter or on Facebook can go viral and have hundreds of millions of views and can launch a career. But I think that that's only the tip of an iceberg. I think that if you don't do the work
Mhm.
and study and have the content and the wherewithal and the discipline and the craft to back it up, then you're just a flash in the pan. So like I think something different of TikTok than I do of Instagram. I think that people that are out there copying versions of 30 to 15 to 30-second dances on TikTok, I don't see the use in that. I think it's fun and
To
entertaining.
become a professional dancer, right?
Right.
Not
But I don't think that that's going to motivate a professional career.
no.
I think And I will say this, I think that there are too many young dancers who look at Instagram and think, well, Misty Copeland posted this and she's amazing. And if I do it like this, no, Misty Copeland worked for 20 years at a craft so that she could post that 15-second clip of her looking spectacular. I also think that it's important that young people and old people realize that Instagram is show business. It's not reality. So it's airbrushed, it's retouched, it's edited, it's been crafted, there are filters. It's like it's not authentically living life the same way that you do in a dance class, in a studio, in a classroom, or even on stage. But I do love the idea that you can be anywhere in the world and you can create something and put it up and it can be seen and consumed and enjoyed by millions all over the world. I think that part is cool. I think don't fall victim to thinking that because you're successful on Instagram, you're going to be successful in the entertainment industry or that you're going to book every job that you go in. I think that when you're auditioning, let's say for a movie, West Side Story is coming out. Let's say you're a dancer and you were able to audition for West Side Story. I think that if you have a huge influence on Instagram, there might be a casting director that's excited about that because then you have the followers that if we cast you in this role, you would be able to help promote the film.
And that's in
So I think,
contracts now. New contracts are
yes,
if you have so many followers, you must do so many posts. That's now a part of a lot
correct.
of contracts.
But I don't think,
You still
and
have
I
to be
might
good enough
be
to learn the choreography and execute
correct.
everything. You can't just be like, for example, in TikTok, I think her name is Charlie. She was a competitive dancer and she came from a
Mhm.
really good studio and she got famous over TikTok. But she's danced for JLo, like she's become a dancer from it. But she was already an amazing dancer and she
Right.
already was an amazing storyteller.
And
That just
already on that path, right?
Mhm. That
Like
was just the thing that got her recognized. And I think that you can totally utilize social media to get recognized, but you still have to have the talent and the drive and the
to back it up.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, if you look in the like mid like 2015, all of like WME and CAA and all of these huge talent agencies had a whole department that was focused on combing YouTube, combing Instagram, combing Facebook to find the next great big star, right? And they did. I think that they pulled out these people, these influencers, these brand ambassadors, these people that like had their own content that they created. But here's what happened. Those people didn't work successfully in the studio system that exists, nor did they want to. They were making millions on their own. Why would they come into a studio system where now they have to sign a contract and they're going to make $300,000 from a film where if they did it on their own, they made $1 million? You know what I mean? So it was kind of like a slap in the face in that regard too. So I think that yes, there is a need for social media. I think that studios and producers and casting directors will look at actors, especially and dancers, if they have a huge following and say, oh, this is an incentive to hire them because then we have a bigger fan base that we can reach out to. But if they can't execute the choreography or motivate the story just because they're famous on Instagram, I don't think they're going to book the job.
100%.
And more importantly, it's about how you evolve in this career. So like I've been doing this 25 years, and the 25 years that I've been doing this, social media didn't exist. If I didn't learn how to get on social media and stay relevant in that regard, but still be able to do television shows, I wouldn't still have a career. So it's about being able to evolve to whatever the new trend is
Mhm.
in entertainment. Currently, it's social media. Will it last? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll
It's the same
evolve.
thing with styles of dance changing too.
Yeah,
It's always going to evolve and change based on, you know, what we all, I mean, people like to learn new things. It's fun.
right.
Matthew, this has been awesome. Do you have anything that you want to say to everybody before we wrap it up?
I want to say to everyone out there that right now, more than anything, the world needs creative, vibrant, passionate artists to motivate change, to inspire hope, and to continue to push the boundaries of who we can be as humans. So I say, whether you're a dancer, an actor, an athlete, a writer, whatever you're doing, follow your passion and stay focused on the end game. Don't get caught up in the flash in the pan social media things. Don't do something for that instant gratification. See the long term and set long term goals for yourself. And buy my books.
Cheers. And don't forget, buy his books, everybody. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, we will be back next Friday. I hope you have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.